Welcome to a rare convergence where patience, precision and craft define excellence. Today we're exploring why Grande Charte, an exclusive grower champagne house producing fewer than 10,000 bottles annually, pairs so beautifully with fine watchmaking. Both represent luxury that takes time. Both worlds reward collectors who dig deeper, who appreciate real luxury lives in how something is made and not just the name on the label. Each watch has a story, each champagne has its own chapter. Cheers to both, to the minutes that matter and the mechanics that measure them all. Francois, you have been a mentor of mine for so many years. I worked for you in the watch industry. You're a veteran of the watch industry. I find you back in London now. I want to know what you're up to, but I also love the fact that 20, 30 years plus in luxury watches and jewellery was not enough for you. You've had to take over the champagne world.
You said it, I'm a dinosaur now, so no, it's an enchanting change for me, because this adventure, it's very refreshing, to move to still in this luxury industry, but working on another kind of enchanting craft. And I think that this is the common point between watchmaking, fine watchmaking, and fine wines. And the champagne, first and foremost, is a fine wine. And when we met and when I discovered your amazing episodes, I think we have to do something together, because in the conversation about luxury, people are talking about how people are tired about luxury. And I don't believe people are tired about luxury. They are tired about the ocean of sameness. But I think that if we manage, to continue to have this conversation where we can educate our clients, our friends, and I believe that it is going to be also a way to, as I say, enchant people, and educate them.
This education piece is really important. I'm meeting with a colleague of yours today, and she's going to educate me on the Grande Charte, the champagne brand, exclusive brand that you're involved in. What's your role with the brand in France at the moment?
Well, the team, they call me the Chief Client Happiness Officer, but basically what I try to do around the world is to develop the brand, and this is a very exclusive brand. We're talking about quiet luxury. This is almost a silent luxury brand, like some of the very exclusive watch brand that you're going to present today. I believe that we are only selling directly to clients, okay? We don't retail. We are in very, very few top tables around the world. Daniel Boulud in New York, Dominic Crenn, in San Francisco, Mirazur in Menton, Club 55 in Saint-Tropez. And not because they are some of the best chefs in the world, it's because they are friends of the brand and because they have a personal affinity with the brand. So that is what we try to nurture, the exclusivity and the privacy.
Collectability, that intimacy, I think is actually a better expression in terms of who your champagnes should be enjoyed with. I think that's a great crossover with some of the luxury watches that I'm going to be speaking about. Their rareness, their exclusivity, their elevation, which speaks so much to your 30 years with Cartier. I'd like to thank you so much for coming to meet me in London today. Thank you for trusting me with this episode, and for me to be able to see you again after all these years, and also for me to be able to speak to your master of wine, and as we discover and explore some of the great cuvées of Le Grande Charte. And McHale, master of wine, thank you for joining me today on Watch World. Today we're exploring the Grande Charte, an exclusive champagne grower. When I started this project, I wanted to explore the luxury lifestyle crossover, and I couldn't think of a better brand and introduction than Le Grande Charte. You're the UK spokesperson. Firstly, what does Master of Wine mean? How did you get involved with the brand? And then I'd love us to be able to do some pairings on some of the cuvées of the brand and some watches and timepieces that I've selected that I feel really align with the products.
Wonderful, thank you, Faye. It's a pleasure to be here, thank you. So I am a master of wine, as you said. There are currently 418 of us in the world. It means that we are members of the Institute of Masters of Wine, which is an organization that was founded in London in 1953. We have to pass a series of very demanding exams, 5 written theory papers, 3 practical wine tasting papers, and a 10,000 word dissertation. So it's quite an exclusive club, and there were a few tears shed on the journey, but I've been enjoying it ever since.
And how did you get involved with the Grande Charte?
So one of the founders approached me in 2018 to work with them in the UK to help broaden their visibility within the wine world and amongst, collectors. So that's how I started, and we worked together quite closely up until the pandemic. Then there was a big break in everything, and very recently I've joined the team again.
Wonderful. Collectability, actually, that's a big part of our conversation as well in the watch industry. Is Grande Charte a wine that should be open and enjoyed, or should it be savoured for a special occasion?
Well, actually, the wines are released when they are very pleasurable to drink, but they also keep for a very long time. And I think, this crossover between watches and this type of fine wine is so fascinating, because in a way you have time in common for both, because these champagnes are aged for an incredibly long time before they're even sold. So they are extremely pleasurable to drink once opened, but they will keep.
The champagnes are ready to drink after years of preparation. What's the technical term?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the champagne production process, because I think it's important to understand the sheer craftsmanship that goes into wines like this. So champagne is made with something called the traditional method, and what that means is that you make your base wine, and the types of vineyards that you source your fruit from is incredibly important for the quality of that base wine. So that's basically just making a normal still wine. Then you blend that up to whatever blend you want, and then you put it back into another fermentation. So you put it into the bottle, you add yeast and sugar, and then a second fermentation takes place within the bottle. And that traps the carbon dioxide, those bubbles that we've all become so familiar with in champagne, and which help it, relax us. Then a process called autolysis begins, and that's where the yeast cells, which remember are still trapped within the bottle, they gradually start to break down, and they release incredible flavors. And the longer that you leave the wine aging on what we call the lees, which is the dead yeast cells, the more complexity, the finer the mousse, the bubbles, the more texture, and just the more interesting array of flavors that you get. The basic vintage champagne that you see on the shelves of the supermarket will have been aged for maybe 36 months. Grande Charte is always at least 6 years, and some up to more than 20 years on the lees. So incredible refinement and finesse.
And that's why the rarity, so they make less than 10,000 bottles a year. So that's why they're such high quality, so rare. And
it's a combination. The rarity is partly to do with the fact that they only source organic fruit, which is still quite rare in Champagne, and they source from very specific high quality vineyards. So there's a tiny quantity of fruit to begin with, and then you've got this very long aging process adding that complexity to the wine.
So lots of elite elements to bring all of the components together to give me the opportunity today to try one of your champagnes, or several of your champagnes actually.
Of course.
With no further ado, I would love to start. Could you introduce me to your first champagne, please? And then I'm going to pair it with a watch that I feel, from the descriptions and from our conversations, felt it aligned quite well.
Excellent. Yes. So the first one is what we call a blanc de noir, which means white from black. And it means a wine that is essentially a white wine, but made from black grapes. And you do that by not allowing any skin contact between the skins of the, in this case, Pinot Noir and Meunier grapes, and the juice. So you make your base wine, which is essentially a white wine, but from black grapes, and then you age it in the way that I've described. But the interesting thing is that even though it is a white wine, strictly speaking, it has acquired some of the fruity berry characteristics of the black grapes. And this is a wine with beautiful purity. I always love a Blanc de Noir. I have a soft spot for that fruitiness of the Pinot Noir and the Meunier. But like with all Grand Charte wines, it has been aged on the lees for 6 years. So it is a savoury and a gastronomic wine as well, but just with that beautiful purity of the Blanc de Noir, which I love. So if you put your nose in the glass, you will spot some of that yeastiness. Can you get that kind of almost like a brioche, like fresh pastry? But you also get underneath a lovely kind of almost like a violet perfume and red summer fruits. Just love it.
Well, before I try, probably is one of the most exclusive champagnes I've ever had been fortunate enough to try. Cheers! Thank you
Cheers,
so much.
Faye.
And no idea how the rest of the day is going to go based on this, but I'm excited to try. Is there anything else I should be looking for in this particular wine?
I would just say enjoy that fresh purity of the berry fruit. That's my key takeaway.
Gosh, very light.
Yeah. Still with an incredibly long finish though, you note.
Yes.
And quite savoury. I think the other thing that always stands out to me with Grand Charte wines is that you leave them in the glass, they start to get even better. They develop with air. And they are fine gastronomic wines that pair with food as well. The other thing I should say about them, and this one is no exception, is that there are very low levels of sugar added. So most commercial champagne that you find has between 9 to 12 grams of sugar per litre, and that is added at the end of the process. Grand Charte, very, very low levels of sugar, and it's actually very difficult to make a champagne with low levels of sugar because everything is laid bare within the wine. Any flaw is going to be exposed, if you like, if you're not able to mask it with sugar. So yeah, these are very dry as well, which I love.
Yeah, you definitely get the dryness. What's interesting is you said the longer it's left in the glass, the more it develops. Champagne is rarely left a long time in my glass. But you've talked about the simplicity. It also sounds like there's a lot of complexity. However, that's not coming through in the flavours. So that's obviously testimony to the brand about its process, because it's obviously not the simplest with the low levels of sugar, which is very difficult for a champagne. So what I've paired it with today, based on what you've explained to me, is a Grand Seiko, a Snowflake. So when you've referenced purity, that's exactly what the Grand Seiko Snowflake is. It's part of the Heritage Collection. It's a 41 millimeter case size with a titanium high intensity case, 72-hour power reserve, and it's accurate to +1 -2 seconds a day. So it's huge, and it's hugely accurate, and it's got a high beat movement. I'm going to stay away too much from the technical elements from each of the watches, because a bit like with the champagnes, there's a lot of detail behind it. There's a lot of technicality. So I'm just going to do the sort of the top line, but more importantly, why I felt it aligned so well with your champagnes. So this is an example of when Japanese craftsmanship stares at a snow-capped mountain and asks themselves, how do I capture silence in a dial? It's very romantic, it's very beautiful, and the Japanese have traditionally the same as us, 4 seasons. However, the traditional calendar, they had 24, and they have 72 micro seasons. Grand Seiko really leans into that and enjoys their natural element. So this dial particularly, it displays the iconic snowflake, and it's an example of pure elegance, and as a white snowflake effectively. It's a stippled dial, so they're all going to be unique pieces because they're not machine stamped effectively. So this is a great example where champagne can only be made from the Champagne region. Swiss watchmaking is fiercely proud of its heritage, but there are several brands that have their relevance in the watch industry, regardless of the fact they're not Swiss. Grand Seiko epitomizes that. They're proudly Japanese, and their movements and their heritage are credible, they have authority, and they offer an incredible value for any client if you're starting to get into the horological world. So this was one I particularly wanted, and the other thing that the Japanese do and are synonymous for, as well as Grand Seiko, and why I wanted to align with this champagne, is that refinement, that attention to detail that's coming through on the champagne that you've introduced me to. They're both respectfully refined in simplicity, but restrained, and I think that sums up both of these pairings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, restraint, but really resonates as well.
Let me pass that to you so you can take a little look. And I'm going to have another sip of this.
Oh yes, please do.
Beautiful champagne.
So that's beautiful, yeah. I'm going to be trying these on.
And it feels so light because it's titanium.
Yeah, wow. Stunning.
Thank you. So, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Excellent.
What could you introduce me to next, please?
So next we are going to try the cuvée of Grande Charte, which is called Trois Cépages, which is French for 3 grape varieties. It is a wine that is based on the 2011 vintage. Vintage simply meaning harvest when it comes to fine wine. It's actually not labelled as a vintage wine, but the wine does come from a single vintage. And what's unique about this wine is that it really promotes the lesser known grape of the region, which is Meunier, sometimes known as Pinot Meunier. So it's 80% Meunier. So normally you'll find that most champagne is a blend of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and a little bit of Meunier, but this one's 80%. And Meunier ages in a very distinctive way to me, very kind of truffly and savoury. So I think you'll enjoy that when you try it. There's 5% Chardonnay and 15% Pinot Noir in the blend. It was bottled in July 2012 and what we call disgorged, in other words, taken off the yeast aging 6 years after that. So again, you've got this long period of aging to give you that complexity. So yeah, I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's very savoury, very almost kind of like saline. You know, when you talk about, you can't taste the taste of salt in wine, but you can almost imagine if you were to visit the seaside and smell that kind of salty air, you can almost imagine that taste coming through in the wine. So.
And for audio purposes, the ladies swill the champagne.
Indeed.
Yes, I've got that. Is along the line of my tongue. Is that right? In terms of that's where I should sort of recognise that the saline. It's much.
Yeah, you're probably feeling the lovely chalky acidity. You know, again, one of the hallmarks of a fine champagne is that it should have a mouth-watering quality to it, but that should be balanced by texture, and so that acidity does kind of morph into that saline quality because it just helps with that complete dryness. Do you get almost like an iodine-y quality? Iodine, saline, mineral, stoniness.
There's a lot going on there, isn't there?
And the other thing, Faye, to look out for in these wines is how fine the mousse is. So we talk about the bubbles as being the mousse. And I touched upon it earlier that the longer a champagne is aged on its lees, the finer the bubbles. And what that contributes to is the fineness of texture. You know, you don't want, you know, like when you pour a glass of Prosecco and it's got these kind of frothy, aggressive bubbles because it's been aged in a tank and for a very short period of time. This, you can feel the bubbles, but they're really gentle. Can you notice the difference?
Yes. Yeah. So it's it indicates the qualitativeness of the champagne.
Yeah.
So what I'm learning is if I can feel bubbles and quite aggressively in my mouth, it's probably not the quality of a Grand Charte champagne.
Yes. Yes.
Hopefully that's quite tactfully put, because this is a new learning for me. I mean, the pricing starts at just under £400, I believe, for a bottle, and goes up, which can be great for celebrations, achievement purposes. There's a lot of reasons to be able to drink a fine champagne. So I think it's really important to learn and appreciate what it is that you're drinking.
Yes.
Because it's be very easy to... I don't think my palate's sophisticated enough, if I'm honest, for this. But I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn everything you can impart about me. But this second one, you can see the difference from it. How do you have a preference between the first and the second champagne that we've tried?
They are both for different purposes. You know, so probably just like the watches that you're going to show me today, they each have their place. And the Blanc de Noir, with that purity of fruit, is perhaps easier to get into and appreciate initially. But this one, especially with the special aged quality of the Meunier grape, it might take a little bit longer to appreciate, or it may require the right food pairing. But its complexity is worth getting to know, in my opinion.
I think I've paired this beautifully. Talk about complexity and the longer aging on the lees. I've chosen a Zenith Chronomaster Sport. Now this is sports watch royalty with legitimate racing pedigree. So Zenith was founded in 1865, but what they're known for is the legendary El Primero movement, and that came out in 1969, and it was the first chronograph, automatic chronograph, that has it operates at 5 hertz, so 36,000 beats per hour. No matter how long I've been working with this brand, I always get it wrong. But what we're looking at is most chronographs operate, and automatic watches operate at anywhere between 2.5 to 4. And over 50 years ago, Zenith developed this movement, and it's stayed with them ever since. So the technical terms are: it's a 41 millimeter, it's a 100 meter water resistant, and it's 36,000 VPH. I did get it right, and I think it's a 60-hour power reserve. So that means if you're taking it, if it's been worn and wound, if you're taking it off 60 hours later, that's when it will slow down, and you've then got to reset the time. I would associate that with how long the bubbles stay in a bottle of champagne. What's the power reserve actually? What is the power reserve of a Grand Charte? I mean, how long can one leave a bottle in the fridge without before it's? I mean, I'm asking this question because champagne is never left in my fridge.
Yeah.
What's the optimum time of a Grand Charte champagne should be left?
Well, champagne will lose its bubbles gradually in the fridge unless you keep it extremely cold and you have a stopper in it, in which case it's pretty good. But you know, these wines are designed to be drunk when they're opened. Like I said, you can't keep them in your cellar. But yeah, if I had a bottle of Grand Charte at home, I wouldn't be likely to be leaving it very long either. So,
okay, what I'm going to do is pass you this, and I'd like you to take a look. One of the reasons I chose this is yours is the Trois Cépages blend, and this has got the 3 subdials, which is synonymous. Yeah, it's synonymous with the El Primero and aligns with their 1969 movement. Basically, their chronographs are precision engineering and wrapped up in everyday wearability. It's a tall watch. It's a re-edition of its heritage, and it bridges the gap between a tall watch and functionality. When we talk about legitimacy and a classic chronograph, I will always go to a Zenith El Primero. As far as I'm concerned, they have the authority in the chronograph movement, which is why when you were talking about the complexities I wanted to introduce this because it's one that movement would have been one of the oldest that was able to maintain that 36,000 VPH. So it's really important to the watch industry. It's integral to Zenith, and they will continue working their re-editions with their legacy. But I felt that it mirrored the complexity of the champagne that you introduced us to.
I love it. It's a great pairing. Love how you've explained it as well. What a beautiful item it is. So horological is the word, is it? To describe the
horological.
Describe the whole discipline of timekeeping. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And those that are if you're sort of engaged, interested in a horologist.
Yeah. Fantastic.
But I prefer Master of Wine. I think I'd like that. Can I do both? Can I be a horologist and a Master of Wine? Perhaps by the end of this, I shall be. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you. We are now on to our third pairing. What are you introducing me to?
So we have tried the Trois Cépages. The next wine is Quatre Cépages, and those listening who have studied French will know that means 4 grape varieties, which is quite unusual for champagne. Most champagnes, as I said, are a blend between Pinot Noir, Meunier and Chardonnay. This one has an addition of a 4th grape, Pinot Blanc. So not a grape variety that you find widely. You get it in some regions of France like Alsace, some parts of the New World plant Pinot Blanc, but it's quite rare. And it adds a lovely, I think, floral hue, citrusy lift to the wine. You tend to find that white grape varieties in the blend of a champagne give more of a kind of tautness, if you like, kind of sometimes they can give more sculpted, more chiseled, and we do have one to try later on which is 100% white grape, so we will talk about that more. But this one, it's just got a little edge that it's adding to it. So I'm quite excited to try this one.
As a Master of Wine, we've just tried the Trois Cépages and this is the Quatre. Can you tell how many blends there are? As I said, I don't have a sophisticated palate. I'm loving the education, but I couldn't necessarily. Would it be something if somebody had passed you this without your education and the closeness to this particular brand? Would you be able to identify that?
It's not easy. It is not easy.
So it's that sophisticated.
It really is very
right.
subtle. Yeah. But I'll be interested to see what you spot about this wine. But again, it has all the hallmarks of a classic Grand Charte wine. It's long aging on the lees. I think this one's 5 years, so again, well above the minimum required in the region. Very low addition of sugar, which is known as dosage in champagne. So once again, this bone dry kind of gastronomic style, perfect for pairing with food. I think we'll have to finish the bottles later with some lunch. What do you think?
I think it's a marvellous idea.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's have a taste and see what we think. I've actually also got the bottle of this one to show you here. And this is a good time to talk a little bit about some other aspects of Grand Charte's ethos. So no glue anywhere on the bottle. You'll probably see here, if you look closely, I'll pass it over to you, that the any writing is etched into the glass. So there's no label. You've got this lovely, completely metal foil. You've also got a tin cap rather than aluminium. And then you can see on the back, you've got all the information about the blend in the wine, and you'll see.
So I didn't notice that there wasn't a printed label on it, but it's stamped. Is that for sustainability purposes? Is it a branding decision?
It's a bit of everything, you know. The fact that the brand was born organic, I think, shows its sustainability credentials. So it's a big part of it is that. It's just also in line with the kind of understated nature of the brand. The fact that it's not kind of one of these bling champagne brands that you see on the shelves. It's only available to collectors and it's discreet. And then you've also got this feel of luxury with the heaviness of the cap here. I actually have a few of these in my collection at home because they're too lovely to throw away. But have a feel of that as well, Faye.
Make a statement piece of jewellery out of it.
Yeah, I know, it's stunning.
Oh
isn't
wow,
it?
you can really feel the weight on that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So it adds the gravitas to the champagne as well.
Yes.
And as is encased in this, as the champagne is encased in this beautiful, and I like that understated element. The watch I've actually got to pair this with is Invisible Statement. So
there you go.
I feel that they're really well aligned here.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that this is the attention to detail that I wouldn't necessarily pay before. But I think as you're having the conversation about as you enjoy a beautiful champagne, the crossover for me and the alignment is how time is spent. And when you've got that level of detail that the brand has put in, and it is usually completely overlooked by somebody that's, whether it's enjoying it. It's the same with a lot of watches, the packaging's overlooked. We don't necessarily take that, but it really should be taken into consideration and savoured, especially when you're dealing with brands that are chic and timeless and classic, which is exactly about the watch that I'm going to talk about next. But talk to me about the champagne, and then I'd love to try it before we
let's have a taste then.
talk.
So as I said, it has got 12% of Pinot Blanc in the blend, but it is like most of the Grand Charte cuvée, it is led by Pinot Noir. So you do have a lot of what we call structure from Pinot Noir. Structure is what enables a wine to age over the long term. But you've got then 12% Pinot Blanc, 9% Chardonnay, and 9% Meunier. And this one is incredibly textured. I think, you'll feel in your mouth, it's not just kind of thin and lean, it's got a real mouth feel, we like to say in the wine world. This is me doing my not only my swirly thing, but also my bubbly wine taster thing.
This is when you can tell I'm an amateur, because I just went straight in for the champagne. You give me something this exclusive and this elite. I was not waiting. How important is that, the swilling and the air through your mouth when you're drinking?
So you don't want to swill a wine with bubbles too much, right? You want to give it a little gentle swirl. And this is a fine wine, so we want to treat it more like a fine wine, but again, just keeping that balance right. The reason that we swirl is because there are lots of volatile aroma compounds that lurk beneath the surface of a glass of wine, and we want to release those so that we can assess it better on the nose. And then the reason that we do the same thing on the palate is that actually most of our sense of taste is actually what we can smell. So when you bring air through the liquid while it's in your mouth, you release those volatile aroma compounds up around your nasal cavity, and you get much more of an experience from the wine.
I'm a bit nervous to do that for the first time today.
Yeah.
It probably it won't.
It can result in chokes.
Yeah. It probably also won't demonstrate the exclusivity of the brands that we're talking about now. That is glorious. May I introduce you to a glorious timepiece?
Yes, please.
So for the 4 cépages, I've got a Cartier Tank Américaine in white gold. You talked about white grape. This is the first white gold watch I've introduced you to so far. So already looking at that exclusivity and that elevation. A lot of the time with precious metal, with white metals, on somebody's wrist, you can't necessarily tell. So it looks like it's steel, and there's nothing wrong with steel. It's with any timepiece. But what this does is it elevates as an experience. You can feel the difference in the weight, which is really interesting when we were talking about the cap, because precious metal does weigh you significantly heavier. And the way that I remember this one, 4 cépages, I've got 4 points on this. It is white gold, it's automatic, it's large, and it has a date model. So it's got everything that one would need on a watch, and first and foremost, it is a Cartier. Synonymous with elegance, synonymous with exclusivity. And the French, basically, it's a luxury where the case architecture was the complication themselves, along with the movements. So they have a big lineage in watches and in horology, but there is a real exclusivity to a Cartier timepiece as well. So let me pass that over to you. And the reason I wanted to choose it and align it with the champagne you've paired is it is chic, it is timeless, and it is elegance personified in a watch.
It's beautifully elegant, it really is. Yeah, and discreet, like we were saying. Lovely. Chic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's one that I can constantly and comfortably look at with continuity. Well, we've had 3 wonderful champagne pairings and introductions. I'm really excited to know what you're going to treat me to for the 4th.
So we are moving into the arena of vintage champagnes, so labelled from a single harvest and aged for even longer. So you're going to see even more of this complexity, this refinement, this finesse that we've been discussing up until this point. The next wine is a 2007 vintage. It is Pinot Noir 80% and 20% Chardonnay. It was bottled back in July 2008 and then finally disgorged off its lees 10 years later. So we are looking for even more, as I said, complexity. It was a cooler year, 2007. One thing I haven't really touched upon yet, and which is perhaps not unique to wine, but which is quite particular to wine, is that whatever nature gives us is also what we work with, you know, in the vineyards, in the winery, and then ultimately in the bottle and in the glass. So 2007 has a little bit more leanness to it than the next one we're going to try, which was a warmer year. But this long aging and the fact that these wines are only sourced from the very best vineyards to begin with means you do override a little bit of those weather challenges. But that said, I think between the next 2 wines we'll look for a subtlety, weather-related subtlety. So let's taste the 2007.
Thank you. Could you pass me that?
Yes, I'll pass you yours. There you go.
Thanks, Anne.
Lovely.
Swilling.
Little bit of gentle. And you've got this lovely 10 years on the lees is going to give you all this baked sourdough bread and all these truffly notes. Lots more of that kind of saline quality we're talking about, since again these are gastronomic food wines. But I've always loved the 2007. It's quite, you know, the first time I tried these champagnes, I could hardly believe how astonishingly good they were. And you know, I've had a background in fine wine, so it's not as if I haven't had the chance to try a lot of good wine, but these really are exquisite.
I just don't know how I'm going to drink any sparkling wine or champagne going forward now I've experienced this. How does one?
I know.
How does one?
I know.
Enjoy?
It's not easy.
That is delicious. And
almost got kind of like dried fruit notes, and it's taken on almost kind of like, I like to think of it as a kind of a fine Armagnac, you know, like this prune and truffly notes. Just wonderful. Love it.
It's delicious. I'm not sure I've ever actually experienced anything like that. And you launched in with, when you talked about this vintage as even more, and that's what I'm pairing with today. I'm going, the next 3 or 4 watches are the even more area, if that's what you're calling your vintage. We vintage watches for us tend to be more associated with pre-owned watches that have been, or we don't have the same language. Vintage does, there is an age element, however we often associate it with a watch that has been loved and worn previously. I haven't got any vintage watches with me today. We've got a lot of watches that have got heritage, which will be on the next piece that we're talking about. But the watch that I'm going to introduce now, it needs very, very, very little introduction. It's the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona. Now, Paul Newman made Daytona famous. Rolex made it unobtainable. I'm not suggesting your champagnes are unobtainable. However, they are exclusive. They're at a very precious price point. And I feel that these pairings work so well together because there's a real respect for the timekeeping, the craftsmanship of both elements. So what I've got today is a rose gold Daytona with a diamond batten dial. Now, Rolex they smelt their own gold. So, and the reason that they don't call their rose gold models rose gold as many others do, it's called Ever Rose. It is a blend of copper and platinum, which ensures that the colour never tarnishes. It's a slightly warmer gold than we're used to with rose gold with other watch brands, but it's the most recognised luxury brand, and it's the template for the wristwatch through innovation, whether it's the oyster case, perpetual rotor and beyond. And what Rolex have done is they have mastered brand positioning. So it's not just the watch itself, but it's the association. So I think we referenced earlier success and aspiration, and that's what a Rolex in precious metal will do. I would call it boardroom confidence.
I love that.
So I'll pass it over to you. And yeah, I mean, just the technical details on this watch. It's 40mm. We've seen a few other that case size. It's an automatic movement, 72-hour power reserve, and as I said, it's the Ever Rose. So it's the alloy between copper and platinum, which makes it Rolex's own specific rose gold.
It's stunning. You know, soak up some of that boardroom confidence. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think with the complexities of what you've talked about, it's that refined richness and sophisticated structure that you were talking about with what you've just introduced us to. And I think it's quite a good pairing. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful. So what, after the 2007 we've just tried, is that correct?
Yes, that's
2007.
correct.
We are now moving on to the 2004. So is that more of a masculine or a feminine? Like, do you use that language in your industry? Is it? We're moving away from it, actually, particularly in case sizes, which is why I've not introduced any of these watches as it's a gent's watch or a lady's watch.
Yeah.
We talk more about case sizing now because nobody should define not what anybody wears. Certainly can be explained as a more feminine watch. So the Daytona that I've just introduced, I personally find, whilst it's a larger case size and it's a strong sports watch, because it's with the rose gold and the diamonds, I personally find it a little bit more feminine.
Yeah. It's a really good question that you ask, actually, because yes, people do use those adjectives to describe wine, and yes, perhaps there's a move away from overtly using masculine and feminine, but we are using still language that will hint at those. So you may describe a feminine wine as elegant, delicate. You might describe a masculine one as more robust, for example, or aristocratic, strong, that kind of thing. Okay. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one. It's this sort of anthropomorphizing of wine, which I think helps us to convey to people. You know, it may sound a bit ridiculous to give a wine a human attribute, but it helps us understand it better. So I quite like doing that. 2007, where are we moving on to now? So 2004, and just before we taste the wine, I just wanted to quickly show you something about the bottles again. So you may see here that there's a little symbol. This one's of an eagle. And then you may see here that it says GC -5 on this bottle, whereas over here we have a different symbol and GC -4. So that relates to this kind of countdown system that Grande Charte are operating. So the GC -5 collection, it has the symbol of one of the first founders on it, and then each release after that will count down to 0. So you've got -4, which is the next collection, and that has a different symbol of different founders on it. And eventually there will be La Grande Charte itself, which is the first collection over which they'll have been involved since the very beginning. So some of the wines were originally from other growers.
And you said that with gusto. I cannot wait for that that pairing and that wine tasting. When are you expecting that?
Well, it's a bit like searching for the Holy Grail, Faye, so we don't know exactly when yet, but we do know that by that point we will have all 5 symbols kind of gathered on the bottle, with the GC -5 onwards, and the identities of the growers that we've been working with for all these years will finally be revealed.
That's exciting. I love the fact you use Holy Grail, because we have a term, Grail watches. They're the ones that are the most sought after, the ones that people are constantly chasing. They're either waiting list pieces or they've been discontinued and no longer available. There are such synergies between a fine watchmaking and fine wines. It's glorious.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
May I please be introduced to the 2004?
Yes, so
they just keep getting better.
Quite similar in the sense that it's the same blend, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But as I said earlier, it was a warmer year, so I find a little bit more, if we want to say, robustness or richness in this wine. And it also has been aged for longer as well. So it has had 13 years on the lease, so the longest age so far. Really savoury, really truffly. Really look out for all those gastronomic flavours. Do you want to take that one? And I'll take this one.
Right, swirl, swirl, swirl. Yeah, you can get that truffle, can't you?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Gosh, that's marvellous.
Sorry, force of habit, doing my
please, I'm
professional gurgle.
I'm not sure if I'm doing it a disservice by not following the right process. I shall just drink it though, if that's okay.
Please do. Yeah.
Will I be upsetting anybody at Grand Charte headquarters?
They want their wines to be drunk and enjoyed, of course they do.
See, I think that's really important. I don't save my watches for a special occasion. It's a special occasion to wear my watches. And yes, this champagne is not necessarily to be drunk on a daily basis. I understand that. However, it is to be enjoyed. And if you're waiting 4 years just to open a bottle of Grand Charte, I think it's criminal. It's the type of thing that you should, with just good friends on a Friday night, when it's just you hadn't seen them in a while. It doesn't need to be those momentous occasions. The occasions make themselves with the right people in the right environment, and that's that quiet luxury.
Yes.
And I feel that about the right watches as well. It's interesting that you reference this one. I've been sitting on the lees a little bit longer. I've got a very special watch to introduce you to. So this is a Breguet Classique Souscription. So the reason I reference the lineage and how long it's been, the tenure of time, Breguet is a brand who celebrates its 250th anniversary in 2025. There are some brands that have had hiatus and have been brought back to life with people that have had a passion for the brand. Some of them have been crowdfunded. It could just be people that have got a real interest and the deep pockets and the vision to do so. The next watch I'm going to talk about is an example of that, and its manufacturer is actually in a castle in Switzerland. It is beautiful from their product, and the creativity and credibility from the inside out. With this particular model, it's 250 years of uninterrupted watchmaking. Breguet was one of the oldest watchmakers, and I have always been a fan. Abraham Louis Breguet is the creator of the tourbillon, but this particular model is called the Classique Souscription. So whilst he was a watchmaker, he was also a marketeer, and what he did with this watch is similar to as you've introduced me to the vintages. None of these watches, the 3 that we've got in front of us at this point, are an accessible price point necessarily. They are a considered purchase. They're not likely to be your first watch either. It's the same as a Grand Charte. It's probably not the first bottle of champagne you're ever going to try.
Yeah.
It's that understanding, that deep diving, that involvement, and that enjoyment first and foremost. And this is why I wanted to talk about these 3 specifically, because they've got all of those elements that you can enjoy in different ways, whether it's their technical prowess, whether it's their heritage, whether it's their boardroom savvy. This is a one-handed watch, which still tells the time. I'm not going to bore you through the details, but the reason not that it is boring, but one-handed watches are not unusual in the industry. They're not the go-to. They're not the first that people would necessarily put on their wrist. It is elegant. It is a dress watch. It is handsome. And the reason that this was part of the anniversary piece for Breguet this year was because that uninterrupted history that I referenced, the subscription for the brand is attributed to why the success of the brand, because it's then not entry price point. So this retails at approximately £45,000. That's the benchmark we're looking at. We'll have all the details in the show notes, just because prices always change. And for me, when you're looking at these products and drinking these champagnes, it's not about the price. It's about the cost versus value. Everybody knows the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. And these incredible timepieces really are, the value that you're given massively surpasses the price point. So what Breguet realised was, because of the price point not always being accessible, he was the first person to introduce a subscription. So you put a down payment of £25% of the watch, then the watch was made to order, and then when it was ready you could pay it off. It was very innovative 250 years ago. So to celebrate the anniversary this year, this was one of the few pieces that they did. So I'm going to pass this over to you. It's Breguet Gold. We looked at the Ever Rose with Rolex. So we're seeing more and more of this, where brands are creating their own alloys. It's exactly what you're doing with champagnes. It's the 12% here, it's the 15% there of those mixes. Nobody knows the details behind these alloys and how they're mixed, and it's the alchemy. The alchemy of the gold. But this is a yellow gold watch, but it does have other metals influence to change the hue slightly. It's much softer than we're used to seeing in yellow gold, and we're seeing a resurgence in the watch industry of classic yellow gold, which I'm very grateful for. But if you take a look at that one-handed watch, and you can't see it, hopefully, if we can get it on camera, I'd love to, but if you move the dial slightly, underneath, you probably can't, there is a secret signature. So you've got the signature of Abraham Louis Breguet, and it's engraved, and it's all of these little elegant notes and design pieces that people just aren't aware of, that really makes me love the watch industry and what they do. And then the back, it's got a beautiful movement, and that subscription is his handwriting. So they've put a lot of detail into this, and it's a nod to it's the original pocket watch. So not the original, and it's very similar in terms of its aesthetics. So they've taken a 250-year watch, brought it to our day, where we get to sit here drinking champagne that has been aged, not for 250 years, but we can appreciate both.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
So what we're looking at with that model is classic refinement, historical depth, and I think that aligns with what you've just introduced just too perfectly.
Yeah, that was so interesting, your explanation of that. I loved it. And the other thing that strikes me that is probably a parallel between the two industries is, there was a Master of Wine exam question that asked, is winemaking an art or a science? And it's both, really, isn't it? And that's what strikes me about the watches as well. I mean, there's a science behind it, but there's so much art.
Well, for me, a watch doesn't just tell the time, it tells a story, and this is one of those examples where that storytelling element is just beautiful. It doesn't I get so engaged with it, so that's I think partly why I'm in love with the industry and in love with watches. Don't get me wrong, I've been introduced to many that you feel that it's the hype, but that science versus art, it's wonderful. My next model is science versus art, because what the designer, creator and founder have done, not founder of the brand, but under its current stewardship, it is that exact example. So why don't you talk us through our final champagne, and then I can introduce you to something incredibly special.
I'm very excited because this champagne is also incredibly special, so it sounds like we're going to be ending on a real high note. So we are looking at the 2000 vintage of the Millennium. What a great year to have on your bottle of champagne. And I tasted this wine only very recently, only a few months ago as we record this, And the first word that came into my head was astonishing, because it has aged on the lees for, I think it's 23 years. It was only disgorged last year. So it would have been bottled in 2001 and disgorged in 2024. It's 100% Chardonnay, so it's the Blanc de Blanc that we mentioned earlier, so a white wine but made from white grapes. And 100% Chardonnay wines tend to have more of a tautness. I think I used the word taut when I talked about the Pinot Blanc, but this is our first 100% white grape wine. And there's a real precision to the wine as well, but yet you've also got that fine gastronomic quality, that savouriness from the long years on the lees, and just a finish that goes on and on and on in the mouth. So I hope you agree with my description of astonishing when you try it.
I'm just making notes because I can't believe the synergies between the champagne and the wine and the watches that we're going to look at. So this is what I am being introduced to.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
So have in mind 100% Chardonnay.
100% Chardonnay.
Yeah, very different from everything we've tried so far. Vintage, the Millennium vintage, which was also an excellent year weather-wise.
I don't think I've ever tasted anything quite like that. How many bottles of these have been made if it was from the millennial year?
I mean, we're talking around only 500 bottles, so I was very lucky to get to taste one a few months ago, and we're very lucky to get to taste one today. Hold on to that taste, Faye. Just enjoy it, savour it.
Well, this is where I feel watches have the slight advantage over champagne, because the piece we've got here by Bovet, that's the brand I'm going to introduce. It's not the most known. I'm going to say it's not the best known, but I'd say it's known by the best. So if you're interested and you have an interest in proper horology, Bovet is and should be a brand that is on your radar. So you've just talked about sort of the world the limited production. The edge we have, and this is where I'm going to claim this one, Anne, is once we've drunk a bottle of your exclusive 500, when there's only been 500 made, at least with us, I'm going to claim the watch industry, right? At least with us, we still get to enjoy the watch over and over again. However, you enjoy the moment of the champagne, so I'm not going to take that away. But if I may launch into this, because, and please do interrupt if I'm talking about, because these synergies that you've referenced, you sort of world limited, astonishing. This is an astonishing piece. It's Recital 30 from Bovet. 6 years in the making, and it solved the daylight saving issue. Now, you probably weren't aware that there was an issue, but there is. So this is a world time watch, which means when you're traveling, what you're able to do is set your watch to at least more than one time zones. There are 25 time zones on this watch, and Mr. Pascal Raffi has solved the problem, because with every traditional world time watch, it is always going to be wrong for half the year because of the time differences. But what he has done is, with his ingenuity, his creativity, his foresight, and his absolute audacity, he has solved a problem and overcome an issue and presented it in a watch that expresses a true world time with a complete accuracy all the time. It has never been done. It's just not celebrated enough as far as I'm concerned. I do have an affinity with this brand. I've met with them on several occasions. They have their manufacturer. If you're ever able to go to any watch manufacturer, I would go. It doesn't matter whether it's one that's slightly more commercial, or you've got the opportunity to go somewhere as exclusive as the castle. Bovet, their watches are produced in a castle.
Wow.
And he is involved from beginning to end, aesthetics, mechanics, concept, delivery. And when you talk about the 100% of the Chardonnay, that's exactly what Bovet are about. It is 100% vertical integration, which means everything is made in-house. which a lot of watch brands claim manufacture, and they are, but many components come from other areas. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't discredit them at all. But the rarity of that 100%, the same way as what we're drinking and very much enjoying here, is the alignment with the Bovet that I've chosen. So Bovet is renowned for originally ornate pocket watches, and Pascal Raffi in 2001 transformed it into that vertical integrated manufacture. So really architecturally ambitious in the haute horology space. There are only 30 of these watches being produced a year, which is why it was really interesting when I asked about how many of the 2,000 are being produced, or have been, because they won't produce anymore. So it's 500. So I feel that this is an incredible alignment. There's 4 time periods that we have, and as this particular model, it's going to be I don't feel I can do this justice, explaining it to you the same way that I probably don't experience this incredible champagne and how it's being shared. So what we've got is 25 barrels with different time zones on there. Now we need to remember that one of the time zones is actually on half an hour. So if you think about when your clocks go back in October, so
it's very confusing.
In October, clocks go back. In spring, they go forward.
Yeah.
Based on the different time zones around the globe, and it's never accurate half the year. And what fascinates me, Anne, is how you can buy a world time from incredible manufacturers for 50, 100, 150,000 pound plus, and it's still not correct. However, what Mr. Raffi has done here, as he's enhanced on his recital 28, this is where the model has developed from. So that also had a tourbillon and a perpetual calendar, so much more complicated. This is much more wearable. So you've got a huge amount of technical elements in this watch that is very keenly priced. I'm really aware that we're talking about champagnes that start at £400 and go up to 2,000 plus. This watch is around about the £70,000 mark, there or thereabouts. I never give exact numbers because prices change all the time. But I just want to be able to benchmark how, with what goes into this watch, how important it is to the watch industry, and also how wearable it is. So you've got the timekeeping around the side, and then you've got the time zones and the countries in the middle, and then a date as well. So nothing is overlooked.
Useful. Yeah, that's stunning. Let's have a look. Oh wow, I love it.
And what I love about that is the rubber strap. It's so casual, and because if you're traveling, one is probably wanting to be dressed. Now you can change the straps, but what I love is the complexity of that watch. You've got something so casual, easy to wear, off the cuff.
It's like a lovely little list of destinations there, isn't it?
I hope I have justified done justice.
I think you have, yeah. I think that was a really excellent way to end on a high there.
Well, we built to a crescendo, didn't we?
We did, yes.
I mean, the recital 30, as I said, only 30 made in a year. And it was this year's launch, so it was really special for us to be able to secure this piece for today. So I cannot thank you enough, Anne, for talking me through some of these exquisite champagnes, the cuvées, the differences, what's important, what people should look out for. And I was able to pair with some incredible timepieces that are rarely seen, some exclusive pieces, and some that just really should be enjoyed beautifully with the exclusivity of your champagne. So I'd love to be able to meet with you again and do this again, because your education's been great. I'm grateful for the time we've had today and pairing it with the beautiful champagne. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Faye. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we get another date in the diary for sure. Thank you.